when you're sitting in these cars, there's, especially the go-kart, it's just a little piece of sheet metal that's protecting you around the cage. Other than that, you're wide open, especially your head's wide open to the elements. You feel the wind at nighttime, all the mosquitoes.
Are you wasting your time and money on inefficiencies in the business? Are sales down and lead conversion rates are low? Are you having problems building or maintaining inventory levels? What does it really take to win in the automotive industry?
Get the cars that make sense for your store rather than just wishing at an auction, so it gives you that better control.
With over 25 years of experience, Darrell the Wolf Steed isn't just another industry voice. He's the guy who's out there solving real problems for dealers just like you.
They'll even say in the Pacific Northwest where you're at that it's a tougher market. It's, it's tougher to find cars. The market's a little bit softer. And in the midst of all this, your turn doubled and your profit's up 75%.
Yes.
The truth hurts only when it should. Are you ready to hear the truths? Darrell is here to unpack the hard truths and the proven strategies that will take your dealership from struggling to soaring. And he is taking it all in the streets, with real talk, open dialogue, unfiltered conversations. This is the podcast series, Street Smarts, powered by SmartWolf Consulting.
Welcome back to another episode of Street Smarts powered by SmartWolf Consulting. I'm Darrell Steed, and we are continuing our journey into finding winning combinations that don't just involve the dealership, but kind of translate across multiple different business units. So the last episode you guys got to see, we got to meet one of the fantastic drivers from the Scott Allen Racing team, Caleb Heady. And today we get to actually meet the brains behind the operation, the one that created all this and got it going. And somebody that I get to work with and talk to, and that's Scott Allen. So Scott, thank you so much for coming on the show. We like to ask every guest as we start is where, and we could talk about career and personal life, but where are you winning in life? What's going good for you? Kind of tell us a little bit about you, and let's get into, how you came to be where you are.
Yeah, for sure. First of all, thanks for having me. As far as where I'm winning is living the dream. Ever since I was a little kid, this is all I've ever wanted to do. I've wanted to be around race cars, drive race cars. Never did I really actually think I'd be at the point where I owned race cars and developed drivers, but that's all part of the big plan, and everything just falls in place.
Hey, that's awesome. And, obviously having multiple different cars, and we're going to get into that and, how that's going, but give us a little background of where you started and what got you into racing, because racing isn't one of those things that people typically are like, when I grow up, I want to race, or I want to be in the racing environment. So what kind of got you clued into that? And then what made you kind of continue that as a career path and, get to where you are now?
Yeah, sure. I was fortunate to grow up in Agawam, Massachusetts, and Agawam had a racetrack called Riverside Park Speedway. Riverside is probably one of the most well-known tracks that ever existed. 1999, when Six Flags purchased the amusement park that the racetrack was at, and they actually ended up putting the Superman roller coaster there. But until that happened, ever since I was born, I think it was actually 2 weeks old, I started going to the races every single week from there. And honestly, it's all I've ever known. I grew up around it. I eat, sleep, breathe racing. I went from being an underage kid sneaking into the pit area, just causing trouble, to growing up around the cars, working on the cars, driving the cars, and, now where I'm at, owning the cars and developing the drivers.
So that's obviously really cool to see. This is one of those things you've been doing for quite some time. And much like the other episode with Caleb, I like to point out things that kind of revolve around to all businesses. And I think people try to say oh, it's different here. We're already starting out and kind of learning a little bit about you. And the first thing that I hear is it takes discipline and consistency of you did this and it was this is what you're doing. You stuck with it, and it wasn't I kind of do this or kind of no, you were working on them, you're racing them, you're living it. which got you inevitably to where now you're, like you said, you're living the dream. You own it, you're developing it, and getting people to live their dream or their inspiration as obviously you're, developing these drivers to bigger and better things or to eventually get to where they want to go. Now, when it comes to racing and Scott Allen, so when I got to come out and meet you and see the cars, I was talking to Caleb about this, but the Legends car, right? It looks like a 1930s gangster car, but the thing barely comes up to mid hip. It's super tiny. Is what made you get so kind of intrigued by the Legends cars and the Bandos and the karts? And then I know you've done some racing in the bigger versions, the modifieds and things of that nature. What drove you to wanting to own the Legends car and really get into that developmental piece of the business?
Well, that was an interesting story. So I honestly Legend cars were never on my radar. They were never on my map. It's always been the bigger cars, the modifieds, Xfinity cars, trucks, cup cars. I got into it, I'd say 6 years ago with my niece, Jaylene, Amelia's sister. She used to come to the racetrack with me, when we raced the modifieds, always just hanging around. And, about a year into coming to the track with me, she's like, you think I could ever do that? I was like, do what? Completely out of surprise because, it just wasn't in her characteristic, to want to, race cars. And so we started talking and one thing led to the next. And I'm like, yeah, whatever you want to do, I'll support you in it. And we ended up getting that first race car that we had, the first Legend car, we acquired it for Jaylene. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to run it. But that's what really got me started in the owning of in development.
Well, I think that's great to see that it was it's inspiration and you're like, hey, you started out, even though you're racing and you're working on these cars, that to be an owner was not because of oh, you're going to make money or you're going to do this. It was to help inspire and develop somebody, right? I always think that's interesting of how does the story come to be and how did you get to where you are? And yours is obviously fascinating because it was nothing to do with you getting better. It was so that you could help someone else and develop and be a mentor and a coach. And, I think that's really inspirational to see where that all starts. Now you guys have obviously enveloped and you guys have gotten more widespread. You have multiple drivers, but there's got to be a story behind the number, right? Scott Allen Racing has this cool, really color scheme. It's this blue and gold, and it really pops. But number 7, what's the reasoning behind this number 7? Is it just a lucky number? Is there a reason behind it?
Yeah, no. Ever since 2016, I raced and worked for Tommy Baldwin at Tommy Baldwin Racing. I've done everything from sweep the floors to disassemble cars, assemble full cars, from the modifieds all the way to his cup cars. And Tommy's become a very close friend as well as his whole family. And Tommy's father, Tom Baldwin Sr., he was probably one of the most legendary modified racers that's ever lived. He's probably, I would say, comparable to a Dale Earnhardt in modified racing. Unfortunately, he lost his life in 2004 at Thompson Speedway in a crash. But the number that he's always driven his whole life that he's made synonymous with anything that he's done is the 7 New York. He was from Long Island. But everybody knows Tiger Tom. On the hood of all of our race cars, we got the Growling Tiger, just like he had on all of his cars. And it's a big deal for us to be able to have the permission and the blessing of the Baldwin family to even run the 7 New York, because, we're not trying to copy and ride anybody's coattails, but that number means a lot to a lot of people. And it means a lot to myself as well. Just being involved in that whole scene for so long and watching it's just a big family, really.
No, listen, I didn't know the story. That's why I really wanted to ask. And I actually think it's interesting now, getting into these deeper levels of just asking questions is, so you're a coach, a mentor, but at the same time, it's kind of living the dream is you're coaching, you're mentoring, you're obviously building this up, and then you're paying homage to the people before, right? You're getting to kind of do the whole thing, the whole spectrum of honoring what came before you and then seeing the new drivers come up. So listen, I think that's a true inspiration, and it's kind of cool to see where the story starts. Some people are like, oh, I like the number, but this actually has a story behind it, which kind of gives that lineage of success.
Well, there's even it even comes a little bit more in depth with that. Is so I met Caleb Heady when I worked for Tommy Baldwin Racing in the modifieds. When his rookie year, we won the Smart Modified Tour Championship, and the car that Caleb drove when he won that was the 7 New York. Well,
so I mean, and that's great. We were talking to Caleb, and then we've talked to Ameyla, and eventually we'll get Reagan. And now I understand you have a new driver, a developmental driver, JP, I believe. PJ, my fault. So, and that's kind of cool to see too, right? Is that you have different levels, right? That you're coaching and mentoring, and now you have this team in the legends that everyone's going after this different aspect to obviously make, so to say, like the tour de force, right? Scott Allen Racing. Now, when I was talking to Caleb, is like dangerous, right? Like it's like when you see it, like they're everywhere. They're in karts, they're in bando, they're in legends on road and oval courses. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about, like, as you're expanding and you're having these different things, what does it feel like, or what does it mean to you to like have to coach and develop these guys to get to that winning level or that winning mentality? Like, what does it mean to you? And like, why do you like this developmental side of it, and seeing the success of these younger drivers?
Sure. I mean, I grew up with a single mom. So everything I've had to do, whether it's racing, sports related, I've always had to figure it out on my own because my mother didn't really like kids nowadays. Some of them have just open checks. This is what I want to do. Here's a check. I want to do it. I wasn't fortunate enough to have that. So it's really, I understand how hard it can be to get into racing. It's a lot of money. And you can spend all the money you have and still just be in mediocre equipment. I'm fortunate where I am tied to my drivers one way or another, where Amelia's my niece, so I would never put her in a equipment that's subpar or unsafe. So knowing that she has the best equipment and giving her all the tools, whether it's Ameyla, Caleb, PJ, Reagan, any of them, the tools to succeed, and then watching them develop their confidence on the track and seeing them come out of their show, especially Ameyla. Ameyla, has always been a quiet girl. And, once she started racing, she's really come out of that show, whether it's personally or just setting her own goals to, be as green as can be at the beginning of last season, never driving anything, to getting behind the wheel of the kart, the Bandolero, and chomping at the bits to get behind the wheel of the legend car. And seeing that confidence come full circle within one short season is that alone's rewarding. I mean, the winning, yeah, if you don't want to win racing, then you shouldn't be doing it. But that takes a backseat to the personal confidence and relationships that we have with our drivers and helping them succeed up. Like, to be honest, the goal is not really just to drive for Scott Allen at the end of the day. We're just a stepping stone. We want to get them to a modified team, to a truck team, a super late model team, and watch their continued success go up the chain. And that right there, to just be a part of something of that is personally for me, that's what it's worth right there.
No, I think that it's an absolute inspiration to develop and mentor and get people to where they want to be and giving them an opportunity to, whether you say live your dream, get inspired, find something that you're passionate about. Everybody defines it in a different way. And that you're giving an outlet for that, whether it be that you're partnered with them or that you're mentoring them or you're giving that, that you're providing that opportunity, because it can come in all different facets, and that you didn't have those things. Like, you had to like grind it out and do that. And I completely understand that, because I came from, we were actually just making a joke about this at the dinner table, which was, powdered milk and they were like, powdered milk. I'm like, yeah, it looks like, Idaho Spuds, like potatoes, but you poured it in there with water and then that made milk. And so, I was very fortunate when I have things happen. I go, hey, every day's a gift, because I came from what a struggle was. Now, when it comes to racing, and like you said, winning's a secondary thought to obviously development and coaching. But, I want to kind of go back to that, because the way I look at what you're doing and how you're doing it is, yes, I mean, if we're talking about winning, getting on the podium first, second, or third, which obviously you've had drivers do a lot of that, and then you have some that are developing to get to that point. But the way that you coach and develop and kind of push these guys, aren't you developing them into that winning attitude of just getting better every day. It's not just about the trophy, the results. It's about building the right actions and disciplines to have a winning mentality?
Sure. I mean, the way I look at our whole structuring of the team is we have big depth. We have drivers, obviously that are as green as can be, which honestly in the racing world is perfect because we can mold them to what we want them to be. There's no bad habits. And we have drivers that have probably been the most successful drivers that you will ever see at their age and with their accomplishments. Caleb Heady's one of them. Caleb could drive anything he wants. He could be on TV on Sundays if he wanted to, or he could just, have fun and spend time with family at the track and race what he wants to race. But that in itself is a great structuring for a development company because not only do we have great equipment, but Caleb is a great teammate to have. He'll give anybody advice. He'll tell them, real quick what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong. So they can not just hear, I could be on the radio and tell people, oh, you're doing this wrong, or you got to pick it up a little bit. But until they really hear it from somebody that's behind the wheel on their own team, it really hits home a lot more.
No, I completely agree. And, having that depth, I think, is also one of those things where you can, how would you say it? You can change, what happens, or like you said, coach them up and give them the opportunity to get better as, things go on. Because at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you're putting them in the position to to do the best they can, right, in order to get to where they want to be, which I think is always, one of those things where it's not always the easiest thing to do, right? A lot of people, I think, say like, oh, yeah, I'm here to help them and coach them and everything else. It's like, well, but are you, right? Yeah. Because at the end of the day, there is money involved. There is time and if they're not getting to, let's say, the podium, right, like you're not winning trophies, it's like, okay, is that our main objective or is it not? Right. And so I think it's always great to see when you have, individuals like yourself that are taking the time to do it. And, and I would never want to down on anybody and say they're doing it the wrong way. But if just getting trophies is the only thing you're concerned about, then you have to ask yourself, okay, what happens when we have the talent, but we didn't give them enough time to develop? Right. And it's always, one of those things where you're actually doing that and bringing them up and doing all those things, necessarily the structured way to give them that opportunity, which then puts them in a position to win, right? And understand what it is too. And, when I do stuff with consulting, I always let people know, because it's like, hey guys, look, I get it. You want to win, you want to do all these things. However, the downside is that winning doesn't just come, it doesn't just happen. Right. It doesn't just magically show up and you're like, oh, I got in the car, or I did this, and we're getting results. It takes time, it takes consistency, it takes discipline, and getting to meet you guys and sponsoring and partnering with you it's great to see it translates across multiple different business platforms. I think some people, they get stuck in their realm, right, and they feel like, oh, I'm in automotive, it's different. No, the things that matter and the things that make people successful are, oddly enough, are very much the same. And when it comes to, what they do or how you get success, so it's great to see that. And I'm bringing up the car. So here's Caleb Heady's car. And guys, I wanted everyone to see this as we talk, because I'm telling you, man, it looks like a gangster car. But don't be fooled like I was when you see this picture and you're like, oh, it's a full-size car. This car does not, okay, it's like a micro machine. Okay, it maybe comes up mid-chest on me. And if you're not a thin or slim individual, stuffing your ass in this car is not the easiest thing in the world, because you have to get out. You can always stuff something in. It's how do you get out of this? So if you could explain to everybody, when they see this Legends car, what's the unique, why is this a unique car? What is the difference between this and they see stuff like you talked about on Racing on Sundays, like a NASCAR or a modified, or what's the unique reason for these type of cars?
Sure. So the Legend cars were developed basically for what we're using them for right now, as a development stepping stone to get drivers into the sport at an affordable cost. I think when they started, they were probably like $9,000 complete turnkey, ready to go. That cost has substantially risen. Since then, I think, all in right now, you're around $35,000 a car. But, they have a lot of characteristics that will, as a driver, if you can drive these, you can drive anything. They have the power to weight ratio and that short wheelbase. They're very twitchy. They go about 135 miles an hour in the draft. So it's not like a little, they look small, they look cute, but when you're behind the wheel, it's a handful, and they don't top out in power when you're, you run out of racetrack before you run out of speed. But yeah, it's a fiberglass body based off of a 1934 Chevy Ford. They run on there's a couple different motor styles. There's a Yamaha FZ09, which is the later style. You can run 1250cc motors. That's kind of antiquated. They're not water cooled. That's, not a lot of people run those. Then you go into the FZ09s. We have Reagan's car is a FZ09 motor. And then PJ and Caleb's cars have the newer style motor, which is a MT09, which is pretty much the same thing. It's just the European version of the FZ. And the difference in those is one's a mechanical throttle and one's a fully electric throttle. So, it's, you mash the gas, it's all by wire. It's got an ECU in it that, talks back and forth to the gas pedal, to the motor, where the FZs are all just mechanically driven by a throttle body.
Okay, that makes, obviously it's not like, as Caleb was telling us, which I thought was interesting. He was like, yeah, these things are, something else. He's like, you don't have a lot of time to react. You don't have, it's a different animal. And like he said, exactly what you said is like, you don't have enough time to, stop the track. Like, you're running out of track before you run out of speed. They're very quick, but then you have to, make sure that you can handle it and do those things, because it's a very different animal.
Yeah, they're not that forgiving either. Some cars, like late models, modifieds, have wider tires. They have 13-inch wide tires. So, if the car breaks free, it's a little more forgiving. It's not going to just dart to somewhere. These cars are such a short wheelbase that you really have to, wheel it and know what you're doing, because if you get behind the wheel and you just, driving too hard, you're driving past that turn. If you hit the brakes too hard, that thing's spinning like a top. So you got to be smoother on the brakes. You got to be smoother on the gas, and really, understand how to keep the momentum going, and really also get on the car and get everything you can get out of it.
No, I think that's crazy, because I'm thinking to myself, right, like after sitting in that car and just seeing this on the Flow Racing app and everything, it's like, I could not imagine getting in this car and doing 120 or 130 miles. Like, to me, and I like to drive fast, I like to race around, and that just seems to me like, yikes, like, yeah. Holy hell. So now, kind of taking a different animal, because I don't have the picture of the Bando, but I do have this. This is the go-kart, right? And this is Ameyla's first car before she's now in Bandos. And kind of tell us, because this is not the go-karts the typical person like me understand. Like, I understand like the K1 Raceway or the go-karts at like Golfland Sunsplash that have the, lawnmower engines in them. Well, this looks like it has a little bit more than a lawnmower engine in this thing buzzing around the track. So kind of give us an idea of like, what exactly does this do? Why is this so different than like the Legend car?
So this is it's called the Wild Thing Kart Series. We run them in Connecticut at Stafford Motor Speedway every Monday. It's a spec series, so every single chassis has to be built by the series. You can't do any modifications to the chassis. They're all built by one guy, Wade Gagner. The same thing with the motors. The motors are all spec'd out. We run a L206 Briggs & Stratton motor that runs on methanol. You can govern them with different plates to change the speeds for the different divisions. There's a Junior Outlaw, Senior Outlaw. Ameyla drives the Senior Outlaw because of her age. But yeah, those things, they look like, a little fun time, but there's no power steering. You're wheeling it on a quarter-mile track, and, your arms are going to fall off before the car falls off. And, she's going speeds of 65 miles an hour in those things. So again, there's not much around her. So you really have to have a knack for wanting to drive fast and get, going, because when you're sitting in these cars, there's, especially the go-kart, it's just a little piece of sheet metal that's protecting you around a cage. Other than that, you're wide open, especially your head's wide open to the elements. You feel the wind at nighttime, all the mosquitoes, you got to make sure your visor's down. You're going to be eating a lot of bugs. But again, this is another series that was made to develop kids into the next level of driving. They start out with, I think you can be 5 years old in the Tiger Cubs. And then from a Cub, you go into a junior outlaw division, which is, they look exactly the same. They're just smaller than the senior outlaws. And then from the junior outlaw, you go into the senior outlaw. And from the senior outlaw, you can really, you could be our age racing them against, anybody. I think it's 16 is the minimum age up until, full adult.
Well, let's not let people think that like you or I are stuffing our ass in this little golf cart or in this go-kart. Because I'm going to tell you, I think I can get into it. I know I'm never getting out of it. Okay, so
I've been in Amelia's cart.
Yeah, I like getting out of that, like just getting out of the Legends car. Now it's funny because you think 65 miles an hour. Now you tell me a 5-year-old's doing 40 or 50, that's crazy, right? Like, but to us, 65 is nothing. But then I also understand being this low to the ground, being this tiny of a car, you're doing 65. I mean, it probably feels like you're doing 100 in a regular car because of just how quick it's coming at you.
Yeah, no suspension. So you feel every little bump. You're that low. You do bottom out. These carts do bottom out on the bumps. And that's really the hard part about driving these, is trying to keep it smooth and keep your momentum up around the turns without the bumps, taking the weight off of the chassis, and then you're out of control or spinning. And, you really just want to, look ahead and see what's going on and just try to be consistent. Consistency is key in those and keeping the motors wound up.
No, I think it's great just seeing the differences in a couple of the cars. And the Bando, I know the Bando's getting, all dialed in, and then that one will be out there. And that one looks like basically like a Prius and a rocket ship had a child. And so I'm very intrigued in seeing that this year. Now, part of being like, building this and developing this and getting these guys where they want to be, like, what's the future goal? Like, what are you hoping comes from Scott Allen Racing? And like, I know you're living the dream, but what's like the ultimate thing that ends up happening? Is it like where you become the like brand that where people want to come develop? Is it just like living the dream and enjoying life? Like, what does that look like for you?
So right now, within a year, we've grown probably, I'd say, 4 times our size. We went from 1 car to 5 cars now. And, it's all about results. So yes, the developing of the drivers, that's probably what I do it for. I mean, to make money in racing, there's a good saying, if you want to make $1 million in racing, you got to spend $2 million. You spend a lot of money, but the people that that win a lot of money, actually, they spend twice as much as that. So it just balances out. But yeah, no, I'd like to sit back one day and watch, the NASCAR Cup Series or Xfinity Series on a Saturday or Sunday and see a handful of drivers that are in that series now and know that I had some kind of a part into getting them there and getting their development going.
Sure. No, I mean, listen, because it's funny. I was talking to a dealer and actually did a podcast. It's a previous episode that ran. His name was Dennis. And I was like, why do people always get so twisted about like, hey, you develop them, you coach them, you give them all the tools, and then they go on to something else. And you're like, well, I don't want to train people because I don't want them to leave. I'm like, isn't that kind of the like biggest way to like show that you did your job, is that you train and develop people, and then when something better comes along or bigger in a division or a job, like if I want to be a general manager and there's not a spot, but there's a spot at another store, that you've put them in a position to be ready for that. Like, I've never quite understood that, why when people are like, well, they're leaving the team. Well, I don't want them leaving the team because they don't like me. But if they're leaving the team because they're going to something better or have an opportunity for something, why would I ever want to hold someone back? I've never quite understood this gatekeeping mentality. So it's great to see that you're like, you have that same thing of like, man, yeah, if they're in NASCAR, if they're in and I know the truck and the late model, I know there's series upon series. I don't know all of them. There's a lot. But if they're in one of those and they're racing and that becomes a career where they can make a living off that, like, I'm elated, right? That, you're part of like how they got there. I think that's awesome. Now, when it comes to what you do, outside of, like developing the team, what does your everyday job look like? Or is this it? Or do you do other things? Like, is this your sole thing that you're doing? Or do you actually have like we'll call it the daily job that, funds this very fun, but yet, like you said, expensive thing?
It's a mix, right? I mean, like I said, we've grown 4 times our size within a year. The goal is this is my sole job. And honestly, this takes 98% of my time up anyways. I do have a regular job, a 9 to 5, but out of that, I'm still, thinking all day long about what I need to do when I get home for the cars, the marketing, the sponsors, I always have to make sure I get my stuff done. So that way the drivers, when they're behind the wheel, have the tools and the opportunities to get where they want to be. And, if I don't hold my part up, my business tanks, because it's all about developing. And I can't say I'm going to develop you as a driver if I can't get you, the sponsors, the equipment, testing, all the opportunities that come with it.
Sure. I mean, that makes sense. And, let's see if I can do this. This is going to be interesting. So we're going to definitely see if this is going to work. Let's try this. Aha. All right. It's sharing. So,
there.
What's that?
That's my Mount Rushmore.
I was going to say, this is why I wanted to bring it up. So you just released this because obviously you had a previous website. You just released this. This is 3 of the drivers because I know PJ was not on the team when this was getting developed. Mm-hmm. But if you guys can see, they got them all. And this is your website, which I think is great, right? You're showing pictures. There's PJ right there. Okay. And, developing the drivers. And then you've got, the races. And then different versions or different layouts of these cars, which is fantastic. And then you see your sponsors and things like that. Now, the other side of it is, because I always like to show people like how they can support it and everything else. So as you guys see, it's scottallenracing.com. And you'll see that you can support certain drivers. You can just get gear. I think this color scheme and things like this on a shirt or a hoodie, I think it looks super cool. Just because obviously I like the look of it. But when you were building this and everything else, how does this incorporate to how you're obviously building that as a developmental thing? Like, what's the plans with the website and getting people to engage with this long term?
So it's really full transparency. I want, whether it's a driver that wants to get their feet into racing, I want to give them all the, answers, or at least a big summary of what we do. So that way, any questions they may have, they know either how to call us, get more answers, be in contact with us. But at the same time, merchandise, that's another revenue, another stream of money that we could take and put back into our team, whether it's if it's a specific driver, all the money that the merchandise generates goes back into the team, and specifically each driver. So if you buy Ameyla Gonzalez apparel, that money that you spent on Ameyla goes back into Ameyla stuff. If you buy Caleb Heady stuff, all that money goes back to Caleb. So really just trying to, not put all our eggs in one basket, try to really, branch ourselves out there to, not lose any opportunities, any direction that we go.
No, and I wanted everyone to see that, and this will get dropped in when we do that, is because, again, you have a really clean layout and then how you guys are doing this. And I want to kind of get to one thing because we talked to Caleb about this, so I want to get your insights in this. So you guys are going to have, how would you call it? In-car action. I guess that's how we're going to say it, is you're going to have in-car action and actually having like cameras in there and showing what's going on. Now, what made you want to obviously, one, do that? And how do you think that is going to, one, help the brand, but two, help get like the everyday person or even people in racing, like even more tied into what's going on when they get to see that?
Yeah, there's so many different things that the cameras help us with. The main thing being actually driver coaching, seeing certain situations. You may think you're doing one thing when you're, spinning, or if there's cars wrecking in front of you, but you're doing a completely different thing. So it really shows them what they're doing, whether they're doing something right, whether they're doing something they can work on. And then it also, the danger side of it, as far as, fans, sponsors, they love to see like really what it's like behind the wheel, and especially a Legends car, because that motor's screaming, your hands are like working the wheel the whole time. And Inex, the Legend Car series, they have a app where you can log in anytime, pay a subscription yearly, monthly, whatever it is, and you can watch all the races across the country. And they also have an in-car camera that they put in their races with a commentary. And you catch some pretty fun things where, you get penalized for something and you're like, it's really not what you thought it was because I have the video.
No, I thought that was great when you had talked about that. I was like, I think it's cool just because I think people think like, oh, they're just driving in a circle or, oh, they're just doing this and not realizing, like you said, like, let's just use the go-karts, for example, right? Is you're saying there's no power steering. Now, for guys like me and you, we probably remember what that's like.
Yeah.
And going like, yeah, you're not kidding when you're like, yeah, I have huge biceps because I was cranking a wheel. But I don't think people realize like, okay, you have to keep it smooth and everything else. Otherwise, your steering wheel is like moving cement. And then seeing the cars and like seeing like, the build of Reagan and Caleb is like when they get in there, there's no like these cars, there is very small amounts of room to even maneuver. And they're racing these cars at 100, 120 miles an hour, 80 miles an hour I think that's kind of the intrigue of just how much discipline, detail, like you said, coaching, like responding and kind of communicating of like, hey, it feels loose or I'm not getting a response or whatever, so that either adjustments can be made or what's going on. Is getting to see that is seeing that dedication too, right? Is seeing like, guys, this isn't something they just jumped in a K1 race car and bombed it around for a 5-minute session. This is like, they got to stay vigilant to it the whole time and, and get their, head on straight. I was even telling Caleb, kind of like Ameyla when she's like talking to herself in the car, it's going to be great because we're going to get to see if like, you're pepping yourself up or, and he was like, he's like, well, I don't know if mine are going to be safe for consumption. He's like, I might say some stuff. I'm like, listen, like you said, he's like, I'm containing chaos, right? Like you're in there and all these things are happening. He's like, sometimes you're going to drop a not so safe for work word. But that's also part of like, how do you process and get through it and then still be able to get to these levels of winning these like championships or regionals, or we were talking about the worlds where he got to go and not winning it, but still like he said, okay, when we go down there, I think your first race is in a couple of weeks and he says, listen, I want to win it. Like you said, he didn't get in this car because he doesn't want to win it, right? He's like, when I get in the car, I'm looking to win. But what he said was interesting to me, and I thought it was great because I know this is something that you focus on too. He's like, listen, I'm going to go in there, and my main goal is I'm coming away with my notebook filled because that's where Worlds is at. So I'm going to know every inch of everything that I can look at because I want to win. But if that doesn't happen, I'm coming away with enough to where Worlds is going to be mine. So it's not just this short picture, it's also this long game and understanding the balance of both of those. And that's the developmental side of him. Like he's like now looking like you is like, hey, I got to look at how I'm developing things and how I make myself better to where I can help other people on the team. So I thought that was great of understanding that. And I said, well, look, if it's on Flow Racing, because every time I see those races, I've got them alerted now. I said, I'm going to be watching just because I think it's crazy that you're racing those cars at 130, 20 miles an hour. It's nuts to me. But I love the fact that, like you said, in the last year, you've 5X growth, right? You've got multiple drivers. It was one, then it was 1.5, and then 2, and then 3, and then now a 4th one in developmental to grow that thing up. And where I think that's really awesome is giving these people the ability to kind of do that, but in 1 year, finding the right partners, finding the right sponsors, finding and giving these kids and the opportunity is, what could it be? Like, who else could get influenced? And like you said, there's plenty of kids out there, and good for them that maybe have, very well-off parents that can just say, hey, you want a car? They just write a check. That would be nice. That would be super cool. But it's also cool to give people like Ameyla an opportunity that they don't have those same type of means or disposable income, or like a PJ and developmental and things like that. Is that how big could this be to where this is that type of like brand where people say, hey, we want to sponsor and we want to give other people, like, who else could you help? Who else could you develop? Because that's part of giving back and paying it forward.
Sure.
So I think it's really cool. And then, like I told Caleb, like my commitment, which we've talked about, is, finding a dealer, obviously out on the area where you guys are at, is, seeing somebody that wants to like tie into that and show that they, they're in the community, right? Like sponsor them and then paying back in the community, and seeing somebody that they see every week or can see every week that is living right next to them, that they do business, that's a potential business person. Because I think that's kind of cool too, is like, I always used to say, like, out in this area, you don't see as much racing like this. I mean, I see some racing, but just not as much as that type of stuff. But it'd be like football teams or baseball teams. It's always cool to give back like that. But then actually seeing something like that, where this isn't just a sport where you're putting your name on something. You're actually helping someone's dream come true, or helping them get to that next level. Like Caleb's story was incredible. At 11 years old, he's a band geek like me. And then he decides that's it. I'm done. And I'm deep into racing. I was like, at 11, you knew this is what you wanted to do? Like, buddy, you're well beyond your years, because let's get real, for most of us, whatever you want to call it, immature guys, like it takes us till 25 or 30 to figure out.
Yeah. I still don't know what I want to do.
Yeah. I'm like, I'm a work in progress. But he's like, nope, at 11, he's like, I went to K1, I raced, and that was it. Like, I'm in. And I'm like, man, that's fantastic to be that driven too, right? To know, like, hey, I'm getting rid of this, I'm doing this, this is what I want to do. And then, like him saying, like, you're the guy who goes and talks to people and then shows them what they need to do and think about the future, and helping them not just learn how to race, but being that coach and that mentor that shows them the other sides of the business, understanding all pieces of it. Because that's important, is people could be like, oh, I'm a good racer, I'm great. Yeah, but there's a business side of it too. And you need to understand all pieces of it. Just because you can drive a car, it's like the ones you see and they're like, sports players. And you're like, okay, great, you're a great football player or baseball player, but then they're broke.
Right.
Well, it's because you've got the talent, but you didn't learn all pieces of the business, right? You got to understand all those things. And that's great that they have someone like they're there to mentor. As we wrap things up, a couple questions for you, Scott. Like, you've got 3 drivers in the Legends, right? So one in road, one, and then some of them might do some other road things, and then a couple in the oval. And you got Ameyla in the go-karts and bandos that does the oval things and the road courses. What does it look like this year? Is it like developmental? Is it like we're looking to a couple podiums? Like, what's the, like, and not like expectations, but more of like dream? Like, what does that look like? Everyone brings home a podium, everyone brings home a first. Like, what does that look like in your dream world as we wrap things up?
Well, I think it really goes back to what each individual driver's personal goals are. As a team, I think without a doubt, we are coming for championships this year, whether it's road course world championships between PJ and Caleb, or it's oval track championships with Reagan and Caleb. And, Ameyla, her growth last year, if you were to ask me at the beginning of last season if Ameyla would be in a bandolero this year within the course of, 13 races in the kart, I'd be like, you're crazy. But, my goal as a team owner is to keep Amelia's continued growth. As long as she wants to do it and wherever she wants to take it, I will support her 100% and be there along the way. And Ameyla is probably one of our most driven drivers that we have. You look and see a beautiful, sweet, innocent girl, and when she gets locked into her zone, stay away, because she's gonna get her results, one way or another. And Caleb, Caleb goes to the track to win, build that notebook. And if, we don't get in an accident or get tied up in something, and we don't win, there's a reason, and we're going to figure out why that is. And same thing with PJ and Reagan. I mean, we have, as a team, a stacked team of drivers that can show up anywhere in the country at any given day and be one of the top 2 cars to win.
I think that's awesome. And I really appreciate you coming on, because, I feel, and I tell people all the time when I'm talking on these episodes and I mention your racing team, that to be able to sponsor and then be partners in with stuff with you, I think there's huge things in sight. But the real reason I wanted to have you guys' team on is to kind of show the bridge between the winning mentality, right? Winners surround themselves with winners, and it's not just about getting the trophy, right? That's where you're seeking. That's where we're going. Like, who doesn't want to be the guy on top, right? We'll call it the Tiger Woods. Who doesn't want to be the person everyone has to chase? But it's also about doing it the right way, developing and putting, like you said, Ameyla wins, great, but it's also developing her to get to where she wants to be. And for those guys, if for some reason they don't win, you're going back to the drawing board and finding out why, and then learning, teaching, and developing. Mm-hmm. And I think that winning mentality is understanding it's not done overnight. It's not done in a day. It's not done in a season sometimes, right? Sometimes it takes a year, it takes 2 years. I mean, it just really depends, because everyone learns at different paces, and then there's those factors that get thrown into you. But being able to be associated with those type of people And that network and surrounding yourself with people that do win that's how you make everyone better, is because they see like, hey, there's no excuses. This is what we do. Yeah, you might have stumbled and failed, but listen, we're going to get back up and make it happen. And I absolutely love, admire, and want to thank you for making that happen for these drivers, because you just don't see it enough from people doing it from the sincerity of wanting to help them. You always typically see it from, it's a business. It's not this is just something that I am passionate about, which the business becomes the secondary thought, which I think when you do it that way, you typically see more success because people know that you actually care. So I think that's great. And as we wrap things up though, Scott, anything that you want people to know, or any burning desires that you'd want people to know, one, about Scott Baldwin Racing, the drivers, so that we can make sure that we get you obviously one, more notoriety, but just more engagement to what you're doing and how you're obviously helping these drivers.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it all comes down to partnerships and sponsorships. You know, I can only do so much with the resources I have. At the end of the day, we make a penny stretch and we get the best out of it. But, you know, unfortunately in our sport, money makes the sport go round. And, you know, I can't show up week in and week out with, you know, limited work, but with no budget. You know, sure. I got to have some kind of a budget, and accidents happen. And, you know, as you know,
Boy, don't I know.
So you got to kind of either plan for that, whether, you know, the best thing to do on a plan for a rainy day and not have it happen.
Sure.
So, you know, any sponsor that's interested in the future coming on, whether it's a small sponsor or a large sponsor, we can get them that exposure, and would love for the opportunity to partner up and grow together as two businesses. You know, one thing racing's really good at is branding. You know, there's not one person, I would say, in the country, if not the world, that does not know some form of racing, some race driver, and most of those successful race drivers that you see now on TV started in legend cars, right?
Sure.
Joey Logano, William Byron, they all came from legend cars, and not too long ago. So this is really where it's at, where the young drivers of tomorrow come to learn.
Well, you guys, as you guys hear, if it's something you guys are interested in, you can reach out to me. You reach out to Scott. His information will be all in everything that we post out. But you guys take a look at Flow Racing. It's a way you can watch these races. They're actually really entertaining, good coverage. And it's kind of surprising at just how crazy some of this stuff can go, because you've seen NASCAR, you've seen that stuff on TV. I'm telling you, this stuff's even more intense. It's they're faster, they're smaller, they're scooting around. But I want to thank you, Scott, for coming on. And guys, this is another edition of Street Smarts in the podcast. And what we're hoping is that you learned at least one thing today. Okay. Whether it be about, you know, the discipline, the conviction, helping develop people, having that care and compassion. If you leave learning one thing, okay, we did our job by doing this podcast and giving you awareness to yet another way that there's people out there helping people, and people out there doing different things. And that's what it's about, is talking to people on the streets, figuring out how we help them and how do we do things to create that winning attitude. And Scott Allen with his racing team is doing one of those things. We want to thank you, and we will see you guys on the next episode. Scott, hang out with me for just 1 second.